So I've been telling you guys for a long time, Coach Kevin Stefanski never liked Shedeur, never wanted him. In fact, him and the general manager, the brother general manager, they were forced to get Shedeur by no other than owner Jimmy Haslam, who last minute did some weird trade accusation to get Kenny Pickett and also wanted to get Shedeur late in the 5th round. I wanted Shedeur to go undrafted after he dropped significantly that low. And people thought I was brazy. Bless one, you tripping, bro. Why do you want this man to be undrafted? Because you might as well be undrafted when you're a 5th rounder. My personal opinion, because now you can dictate which teams you're going through, and he would have a beautiful agent like Drew Rosenhaus or other great credible agents who would have definitely get a top-notch team.
I told you that the Cleveland Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski never wanted Shedeur Sanders on his team. That everything you thought you knew about this draft pick was a lie. Well, buckle up, because the truth just got exposed, and it's uglier than you think. We're talking about a coach who was literally forced by owner Jimmy Haslam to draft a quarterback he despised, while secretly scouting his replacement before the season even starts. This isn't just about football anymore. This is about power, control, and a front office war that's about to tear the Browns apart from the inside. Look, I've been telling you this for months, and now the receipts are finally here. You thought the Browns saved Shedeur Sanders? You thought they were doing him a favor? Man, wake up. This organization doesn't give a damn about Shedeur, and the evidence is staring us right in the face. That let's start from the beginning, because this story goes deeper than anyone wants to admit. Kevin Stefanski. This is the same coach who got Coach of the Year awards for losing seasons. By the way, never believed in Shedeur Sanders from day one. Never. And I'm not just throwing around accusations here. The proof is in how this whole draft scenario went down. Picture this. It's draft day, and Stefanski and general manager Andrew Berry are sitting there with their own plans. They've got their guy, they've got their strategy, and Shedeur Sanders isn't part of it. But then owner Jimmy Haslam steps in at the last minute, and I mean last minute, pulling some weird trade moves to get Kenny Pickett while also wanting to snag Shedeur late in the 5th round. 5th round. Let that sink in for a second. This is a quarterback who many had projected much higher, and Haslam was content to wait until the 5th round, hoping Shedeur would drop that far. The disrespect was already baked into the cake from the jump, but here's where it gets really interesting. And this is where you need to pay attention, because this exposes everything about how this organization really operates. Stefanski and Berry were essentially overruled by their own owner. Imagine being a head coach, thinking you're running the football operations, only to have the owner come in and dictate who you're drafting. That's not how successful organizations work, and it's definitely not how you build trust between a coach and his quarterback. Now, I know some of you are thinking, but DJ, maybe Stefanski came around. Maybe he warmed up to Shedeur after working with him. Wrong. Dead wrong. And here's how I know.
Anytime he had to speak on his quarterbacks, he basically, I don't know how to articulate without getting in trouble, but he glazed the hell out of Joe Flacco, glazed the hell out of Kenny Pickett, and he damn near shed a tear for Dillon Gabriel. But when it came up to Shedeur, he always dismisses certain things, bypass. I warned you Shedeur was not going to get much reps in the mandatory OTAs, and you guys got mad at me, but not Kevin Stefanski. Why would Shedeur get a lot of reps when Kevin told y'all in front of the world 1 week before OTAs that certain quarterbacks were going to have limited reps? Limited. And that certain quarterback was only one quarterback. It was Shedeur. See, they drafted Dillon Gabriel.
Look at how Stefanski talks about his quarterbacks. When he's discussing Joe Flacco, the man lights up like a Christmas tree. Kenny Pickett? Same energy. Dillon Gabriel? He's practically shedding tears talking about the potential. But when Shedeur's name comes up, completely different tone. Dismissive, cold, professional, but cold. This isn't speculation. This is observable behavior that anyone paying attention could see. Before the OTAs even started, Stefanski went on record saying certain quarterbacks would have limited reps. And guess which quarterback he was talking about? It wasn't Joe Flacco getting limited reps. It wasn't Kenny Pickett. It was Shedeur Sanders. Think about that for a second. You draft a quarterback, whether it was your choice or not, and before he even gets a fair shot to compete, you're already limiting his opportunities. That's not how you develop talent. That's how you sabotage it. But wait, it gets worse. Way worse. While all this is happening, while Shedeur is getting the cold shoulder treatment, while he's being given limited opportunities to prove himself, guess what the Browns are doing behind the scenes? They're already scouting his replacement. I'm not talking about next year's draft prep. I'm talking about active scouting, active interest, active conversations about moving on from Shedeur before he's even played a regular season snap. And who's the target of their affection? Cade Klubnik from Clemson. Let me tell you about this situation because it perfectly illustrates everything wrong with how the Browns operate. Cade Klubnik, and I want you to really listen to this, hasn't proven anything at the college level. Yet. Nothing. The college season hasn't even started, and somehow he's being rated as the #1 quarterback prospect over Shedeur Sanders by so-called professional analysts. Who's doing this rating? A guy named Jacob Infante. And I use the term professional very loosely here. This is the kind of analyst who gets hired off the street, given a title, and suddenly his opinion carries weight in NFL circles. But here's the kicker: the Browns are eating this up. They're buying into this hype. They're making inquiries. They're telling scouts they want Klubnik in next year's draft. How do you want a quarterback in next year's draft when the college season hasn't even started? How do you make that determination? Unless, of course, you were never really invested in your current quarterback situation to begin with. Let's compare these two quarterbacks for a second because the contrast is insane. Shedeur Sanders put up legitimate numbers at Colorado. He dealt with a subpar offensive line, inconsistent protection, and still managed to perform at a high level. His accuracy, his decision-making, his leadership, all documented and proven at the college level. Cade Klubnik? He's playing for Clemson, a program that Dabo Swinney himself admits is struggling due to NIL and transfer portal issues. Klubnik has had the benefit of playing with better talent around him, better coaching infrastructure, and more resources. Yet somehow, he's being positioned as the superior prospect. This is where you see the bias, the politics, and frankly, the incompetence of how these evaluations are done. It's not about merit. It's not about performance. It's about narratives, preferences, and agendas that have nothing to do with actual football ability. But let's get back to Kevin Stefanski, because his behavior in all of this is the most telling part of the story. This is a coach who's supposed to be developing quarterbacks, supposed to be getting the best out of his players, supposed to be building a winning culture. Instead, he's playing favorites, limiting opportunities, and apparently shopping for replacements before giving his current players a fair chance. Remember, this is the same Kevin Stefanski who somehow won Coach of the Year awards for losing seasons 2 times. In 2020 and 2023, he got Coach of the Year recognition while posting losing records. That should tell you everything you need to know about how this league evaluates success. How do you win Coach of the Year with a losing record? How does that make sense? It's like getting Employee of the Month for showing up late every day. But that's the Cleveland Browns for you, celebrating mediocrity, rewarding failure, and wondering why they can't get over the hump. Now, let's talk about what this means for Shedeur Sanders specifically, because this situation is tragic on multiple levels. Here's a young quarterback with legitimate talent, legitimate potential, and he ends up in possibly the worst situation he could have landed in. Not worst in terms of wins and losses, but worst in terms of organizational dysfunction, coaching instability, and front office politics. Shedeur needed to go to an organization that believed in him, that would invest in his development, that would give him the tools and support to succeed. Instead, he lands with a coach who never wanted him, a front office that was overruled on the pick, and an organization that's already looking for his replacement. This is bigger than football, and it's deeper than just X's and O's. This is about organizational culture, about how you treat people, about how you build trust and develop talent. The Browns are failing on every single level, and here's what's really frustrating. Shedeur Sanders could have gone undrafted and had more control over his situation. As a 5th-round pick, he's locked into Cleveland's dysfunction. If he had gone undrafted, he could have chosen a team that actually wanted him, that actually had a plan for his development. Instead, he's stuck in Cleveland with a coach who's publicly limiting his reps, privately scouting his replacement, and apparently counting down the days until he can move on to the next quarterback. But you know what? This story isn't over. Not by a long shot. Because what we're seeing here is a pattern that goes beyond just Shedeur Sanders. This is about how the Browns operate as an organization, how they make decisions, how they treat their players. Look at their track record with quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield, drafted number 1 overall, given every excuse in the book despite his off-field issues, and eventually run out of town. Deshaun Watson, massive contract, massive legal issues, massive disappointment. And now Shedeur Sanders, drafted against the coach's wishes, given limited opportunities, already being replaced in their minds. See the pattern? This isn't about the quarterbacks. This is about an organization that doesn't know how to evaluate talent, doesn't know how to develop players, and doesn't know how to build a winning culture. Kevin Stefanski is now in his 5th year as head coach. 5th year, with a track record of losing seasons, quarterback controversies, and organizational dysfunction. At what point does accountability kick in? At what point do Browns fans demand better? The fact that Cade Klubnik is even being discussed as a potential target shows you how little faith this coaching staff has in their current situation. They're already looking ahead to next year's draft while completely writing off this year's development. And let's be real about Klubnik for a second. He's playing for a Clemson program that's nowhere near the powerhouse it used to be. Dabo Swinney is struggling to adapt to the modern college football landscape. The talent level isn't what it used to be. Yet somehow, Klubnik is being positioned as a can't-miss prospect. This is the same type of evaluation that led to drafting Baker Mayfield number 1 overall. The same type of hype-driven, narrative-based scouting that continues to fail organizations year after year. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders, who actually produced at the college level, who actually showed leadership and resilience in difficult situations, gets treated like an afterthought by his own coaching staff. The disrespect is obvious. The bias is obvious. The dysfunction is obvious. And Browns fans deserve better than this endless cycle of incompetence. So what happens next? Well, if history is any indication, Stefanski will continue to mismanage the quarterback situation, the Browns will continue to underperform, and Shedeur Sanders will either overcome all of this dysfunction or become another casualty of Cleveland's organizational failures. But here's my prediction, and you can bookmark this. Shedeur Sanders is going to prove every single doubter wrong. He's going to show that talent rises above politics, that performance matters more than preferences, and that real quarterbacks find a way to succeed regardless of the circumstances. Kevin Stefanski exposed himself with this whole situation. He showed that he's more interested in his own preferences than developing the talent on his roster. He showed that he's willing to sabotage players he didn't personally choose. And he showed that the Browns' dysfunction runs deeper than anyone imagined. This is why the Browns have been an abysmal franchise for decades. This is why they can't get out of their own way. This is why they continue to disappoint their fans year after year. The truth is out there now. The receipts are on the table. Kevin Stefanski never wanted Shedeur Sanders, and he's doing everything in his power to prove he was right, even if it means sabotaging his own team's success. What do you think? Is Stefanski setting Shedeur up to fail? Should the Browns have let their coach choose his own quarterback? And is Cade Klubnik really worth all this hype? Or is this just another case of Cleveland chasing the wrong guy? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if this video opened your eyes to what's really happening in Cleveland, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell.